There are battles no one will ever applaud you for winning. There are victories that leave no medals, no headlines, no speeches in your honor. They happen in the quiet, in the hours when no one is watching, and their trophies are invisible, felt only in the way you begin to walk differently, speak differently, live differently. These are the invisible battles, the struggles that happen entirely within you, and they shape you far more than any public triumph ever could. Most people think of strength as something proven in the open, a test passed, a mountain climbed, a competitor defeated. These moments matter, but they are often the final act of a story that began far earlier, in the private arena of the mind and soul. Long before anyone sees the result, you have already fought 100 smaller battles. The battle to keep going when no one believes in you, the battle to stay disciplined when there is no one to hold you accountable, the battle to stay kind when bitterness would be easier. The Stoics understood this distinction. Marcus Aurelius wrote constantly to himself, not to impress anyone else, but to keep his own mind in order. He was emperor of Rome, surrounded by public duties and constant scrutiny, yet the writings he left behind were not speeches to the crowd. They were reminders to his own soul. They were weapons for invisible battles, against anger, against vanity, against despair, against the temptation to abandon his principles when they were inconvenient. The world rarely sees these fights because they happen where applause cannot reach. There is no audience when you resist the urge to lash out at someone who has wronged you. No one hands you a trophy for waking up early to keep a promise you made to yourself. No one congratulates you for walking away from a conversation before your temper turns it into a war. These moments are quiet, but they are decisive. They are where character is carved. The challenge is that invisible battles often feel thankless. You may wonder why you keep showing restraint when others do not. You may question why you keep choosing the harder right when the easier wrong would be faster and more rewarding. You may even feel foolish for holding to principles that seem to bring you no obvious advantage. This is where the Stoic mindset becomes your anchor. You remember that the value of a choice is not measured by how many people notice it, but by whether it strengthens the person you are becoming. Seneca warned that living well is often a solitary project. Not because you are physically alone, but because the work is internal and most of it will go unrecognized. The discipline to keep your word even in small things. The courage to face discomfort without complaint. The honesty to admit your own faults when it would be easier to hide them. These are not the moments that make your biography, they are the moments that make your life. What makes invisible battles harder is that they do not end with the fanfare of a visible victory. You may win them today and have to fight them again tomorrow. The temptation you resisted yesterday may return with a new disguise. The anger you mastered last week may flare up again in an entirely different form. Progress in these battles is not marked by permanent conquest, but by your growing skill at meeting them without surrender. And here is the paradox. These quiet victories are what make you capable of public ones. Without the discipline honed in solitude, the courage trained in silence, the self-control forged in moments no one will ever know about, you cannot stand steady when the eyes of the world are on you. The public fight may look impressive, but it is only the visible tip of a mountain whose base was built in private. So you learn to value the battles no one sees. You stop needing others to validate them. You start to take a kind of quiet pride in the unseen work, knowing that every time you win one of these fights, you are shaping something far more enduring than a momentary reputation. You are shaping the core of yourself. And when the next storm comes, when the next public test arrives, you will stand ready not because you suddenly became strong, but because you have been practicing strength where no one was looking. The mistake most people make about resilience is thinking it appears in the moment of crisis, as if strength is something you can summon instantly when everything falls apart. But the Stoics knew better. They understood that the ability to withstand storms is not built during the storm, it is built in the countless quiet days before it arrives. Resilience begins in the training ground of invisible battles. These are the moments where no one is judging your performance, no one is taking notes, no one will ever ask you about the outcome. And yet, the choices you make here decide how you will respond when the stakes are high. The Stoics treated every ordinary day as a rehearsal for extraordinary trials. Marcus Aurelius didn't wait for disaster to test his patience. He practiced it with the small irritations of daily life. A servant making a mistake, a senator speaking out of turn, a courier arriving late. Each was an opportunity to hold steady, to remind himself that his peace of mind did not depend on external events. These moments were not glamorous, but they were essential. They trained him to face betrayal, war, and political upheaval with the same calm. Seneca advised practicing voluntary discomfort, not to punish oneself, but to weaken the hold that comfort has over the mind. Eating plain food when you could have a feast. Sleeping on a hard bed when you could have silk sheets. Wearing simple clothes when you could afford luxury. These acts may seem trivial, but they are invisible battles against the belief that you need certain conditions to be well. If you can be steady in small discomforts, you will be unshaken in great ones. Epictetus, born a slave, understood this principle more than most. His daily life was full of struggles no one celebrated. He trained his mind to see each moment, whether it was a word of insult, a delay in freedom, or a physical hardship, not as an outrage, but as a chance to practice the virtues he valued. He reminded his students that the real contest was always within, to choose reason over impulse, clarity over panic, discipline over surrender. This kind of preparation is invisible because it is woven into the fabric of daily life. It's not about grand gestures, but about consistency. You don't build the muscle of self-control in one dramatic act. You build it in hundreds of small choices, each one reinforcing the kind of person you are becoming. You don't develop courage only when facing danger. You develop it every time you speak truth, when it's easier to stay silent. The challenge is that these moments can feel insignificant. Choosing patience when someone cuts in front of you in line, walking away from an argument before it turns ugly, admitting you were wrong before someone forces you to. None of these will earn applause, but together they become the architecture of your character. They are the rehearsals that ensure you don't freeze, crumble, or betray yourself when the true tests come. And here's the thing, when those bigger moments arrive, there is no time to learn. The mind defaults to the habits it has been practicing. If you have been feeding impatience, self-indulgence, and excuses in the quiet moments, those will be your companions in the storm. If you have been feeding discipline, humility, and courage, those will be there instead. This is why the Stoics saw every day, no matter how ordinary, as sacred training. Not because each day would bring dramatic events, but because each day was a chance to shape the reflexes of the soul. When you win these private battles again and again, you build a kind of quiet confidence. Not arrogance, not bravado, but the deep knowledge that you have faced yourself honestly and held your ground. You may never tell anyone about these victories. No one will know that you bit your tongue when you could have spoken cruelly, or that you resisted a temptation that would have compromised you. But you will know, and knowing becomes strength. Knowing means that when life demands more of you than you think you have, you will be able to meet that demand, not because you suddenly became strong in that moment, but because you have been living strong all along. Invisible battles are not only hard because they demand discipline without recognition, they are hard because they can feel desperately lonely. When you are engaged in a struggle that no one else can see, it's easy to believe that no one would understand it even if they did. And this belief, if left unchecked, can erode your resolve faster than the difficulty of the battle itself. Consider the person resisting a deeply ingrained habit, addiction, self-destructive thoughts, an explosive temper. Every day they wake and fight the same impulses. To the outside world, nothing has changed. They go to work, attend gatherings, smile when expected. Inside, however, they are wrestling with a force that feels stronger than themselves. No one claps for them when they walk past a drink they want, or when they hold their tongue in the face of provocation. No one knows how much energy they've already spent before the day has even begun. The Stoics knew this form of isolation well. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself that people would not understand the inner work he was doing, that they might even mock it. He did not rely on their understanding to continue. He wrote to himself as if he were his own witness, because in these private wars you are both the warrior and the sole judge of your performance. The emotional cost of invisible battles is magnified by their repetitiveness. Public victories tend to be linear. You train, you compete, you win or lose, and the event is over. Private struggles, on the other hand, often cycle. You win today, but you will have to fight again tomorrow, and the day after that. This can lead to fatigue that seeps into the soul, the sense that you are endlessly climbing the same hill with no summit in sight. Here, the Stoic discipline of perspective becomes vital. Seneca wrote that we must not measure progress only by the distance from the starting point to the end, but also by the small improvements made along the way. In the realm of invisible battles, progress is often measured in millimeters, one more moment of patience than yesterday, one less word spoken in anger, 1 hour longer before temptation is entertained. You begin to see that the repetition itself is the training, that each day you endure without surrender, you are reinforcing the walls of your inner fortress. But even with perspective, the loneliness remains. Few will understand why you walk away from certain comforts, why you decline invitations that would place you in tempting situations, why you choose silence when insulted. In a culture that celebrates visible wins and instant gratification, this kind of restraint is often invisible not only to others but, over time, to yourself. You may forget how much effort it takes simply because the effort has become your normal. This is why the Stoics practiced self-examination, not self-criticism, but honest acknowledgement of the day's victories and failures. Marcus Aurelius reviewed his conduct nightly, not to congratulate himself in vanity, but to ensure that he saw the truth of his own progress. Without this, you risk living in a fog, where your struggles blend together until you cannot see how far you've come. Another danger of these silent struggles is bitterness. When you fight alone for long enough without recognition, resentment can creep in. You may feel tempted to abandon your efforts simply because they go unnoticed. The Stoic answer to this is clear: you do not fight for applause. You fight because the battle is worth winning in itself. Epictetus warned that if you seek reward outside of virtue, you will be disappointed, because the world may never value the work you are doing. But if you value the work for its own sake, you will never lose that reward. Still, there is no denying that invisible battles drain you. They demand that you be your own encourager, your own trainer, your own medic when the wounds are deep. And in the darkest moments, when you feel you cannot carry the weight alone, the Stoic lesson is this: reach for allies where you can find them, but do not depend on them to fight your fight. A friend, a mentor, a teacher can lend perspective, can remind you of the reasons you started, but they cannot swing your sword for you. This acceptance is not meant to make you feel abandoned. It is meant to make you sovereign over your own strength. The day will come when no one will be around to remind you why it matters, and on that day, your victory will depend on the habits you've built in the long, lonely hours. Invisible battles are lonely because they must be. They are fought in the interior of your mind where no one else can fully enter. But they are also where the deepest transformations occur. And when you emerge from them, not with fanfare, but with quiet steadiness, you carry a kind of strength that cannot be faked, borrowed, or inherited. It is yours, and yours alone. Public victories can be dazzling. They bring applause, recognition, and the satisfaction of a goal achieved in plain view. But the Stoics understood that there is a deeper kind of victory, one that works in secret and leaves its mark not on your resume, but on your soul. These are the invisible battles, the private tests no one else witnesses, that shape virtues in a way no stage or spotlight ever could. The first of these virtues is discipline. Discipline built in silence is different from the kind born in competition. In public, discipline can be reinforced by the gaze of others. You train harder because someone is watching, because you don't want to fail in front of an audience. But in private, discipline is stripped of this external fuel. It becomes a matter of principle alone. I will keep this promise to myself because I said I would, and because I respect my own word. That kind of discipline is harder to build and harder to break. Think of the person who wakes before dawn to study, train, or create, not because a deadline looms, but because they have decided their life is better lived this way. There is no applause for those early hours. The room is quiet. No one else knows or cares. But over time, this invisible repetition carves an unshakable steadiness into the mind. And when public tests arrive, this person's strength is not in the motivation of the crowd, but in the private contract they have honored with themselves day after day. The second virtue is patience. Public wins tend to happen in bursts. A race run in minutes, a speech delivered in an hour, a project unveiled in a moment. Patience, however, is forged in the long gaps between. It is the ability to endure without bitterness, to keep working when results are delayed, to stay steady when nothing seems to be moving. Invisible battles demand this constantly. You fight the same temptations over and over. You endure criticism without responding. You wait for change in situations where the outcome is uncertain. Each repetition strengthens your capacity to hold your ground without collapsing into frustration. The third virtue is humility. Public victories can inflate the ego, private ones tend to do the opposite. When you fight battles no one sees, there is no audience to tell you how great you are. You begin to see yourself not as a hero, but as a student, someone engaged in an ongoing apprenticeship to their own better nature. You learn that there is no final victory over your flaws, only the daily choice to confront them again. This humility keeps you teachable, and a teachable person can grow endlessly. The fourth virtue is integrity. Integrity is tested most when no one else will know the outcome. In public, it is often easy to do the right thing. Social pressure reinforces it. In private, the only witness is your own conscience. Do you keep your promises when they inconvenience you? Do you hold to your standards when shortcuts would go unnoticed? These are invisible battles, and every time you win one, you strengthen the alignment between your values and your actions. That alignment is the essence of integrity. The fifth virtue is self-mastery. Most visible achievements, career milestones, athletic victories, creative success, require some level of control over external circumstances. But invisible battles deal almost entirely with the internal, your impulses, your moods, your desires. Winning them means you are no longer a servant to every passing urge. You may still feel anger, fear, or envy, but they no longer dictate your choices. This mastery is subtle. It doesn't make headlines, but it changes the entire texture of your life. And then there is courage. We tend to think of courage as dramatic, charging into battle, standing up to injustice in the public square. But there is a quieter courage, the courage to face yourself honestly, to admit the gap between who you are and who you want to be, and to close that gap without fanfare. It takes courage to acknowledge your weaknesses without hiding behind excuses. It takes courage to keep showing up to a fight you may have already lost many times before. And it takes courage to win quietly, knowing that no one will cheer but you. What makes these virtues so enduring is that they are formed under conditions where there is no external reward. They become part of you in a way that cannot be taken away when circumstances change. Public victories can be undone, titles lost, records broken, recognition faded. But virtues forged in silence remain, because they were never dependent on external conditions to begin with. The Stoics prized this kind of strength because it was the only kind that could not be stolen. Wealth can be confiscated, power can be overthrown, reputation can be destroyed. But the discipline, patience, humility, integrity, self-mastery, and courage you build in unseen battles stay with you until your last breath. They are the tools you will carry into every trial, visible or invisible, for the rest of your life. This is why the Stoic does not lament the absence of an audience. They know that the work done in obscurity is the most important work of all. It is here, in the dim light where no one is watching, that a person is shaped into someone who can walk into the public arena without fear, because the real battles, the defining battles, have already been fought and won in silence. There comes a point when the private work you've been doing is brought into the light, not because you sought recognition, but because life inevitably forces every person into moments where their strength is on display. These moments may not come often, but when they do, they are unmistakable. A crisis hits. A betrayal cuts deep. A sudden opportunity demands you rise higher than you've ever stood before. In these moments, the preparation you've done in silence becomes the invisible scaffolding that holds you steady. To the outside world, it may look as if you are simply naturally calm, under pressure, or born disciplined or gifted with a level head. They see only the visible moment and assume it is the whole story. But you know better. You know that your composure in the public storm is the result of countless private storms you've weathered before. Storms so small that no one else would have noticed, but so frequent that they shaped every fiber of your character. Think of a soldier on the battlefield. When the noise, chaos, and danger are all around, it is not the day's adrenaline that determines survival. It is the months and years of drills, training, and discipline that no one outside the unit has ever witnessed. Likewise, when life calls you into a visible test, your response is not improvised in the moment. It is the execution of skills you honed in the quiet. Marcus Aurelius faced such moments many times: plagues that decimated his empire, wars that tested Rome's survival, political intrigue that threatened his rule. Yet his own writings reveal a man who attributed his steadiness not to sudden bursts of courage, but to daily mental preparation. Every day he reminded himself of life's volatility, the inevitability of hardship, the need for virtue regardless of circumstance. So when the great tests came, he was not scrambling to find his footing. He was simply standing on the foundation he had been building all along. Invisible battles make you adaptable when the world's eyes are on you. If you've been practicing patience in the face of small annoyances, you're less likely to lose control when faced with public criticism. If you've been building discipline by keeping private commitments, you're ready to deliver on public ones, even under pressure. If you've been mastering your impulses in quiet moments, you can resist the temptations that often accompany power, recognition, or crisis. This is why the Stoics valued preparation over performance. Performance, they knew, is just the moment when preparation becomes visible. The problem is that many people reverse the order. They focus on looking strong when it matters rather than being strong all along. This is why they crumble in the spotlight. The habits they've built in private are not the ones that will hold them when tested. And here's the paradox: when you are truly prepared, you don't crave the spotlight at all. You are not training for applause, you are training because life will demand it, whether anyone is watching or not. This is why some of the strongest people you will ever meet seem almost indifferent to recognition. They understand that public storms are not competitions to be won. They are simply moments to act according to who they have already become. Invisible battles also keep you from being surprised by hardship. Most people enter public crises as if they are a betrayal of life's normal course, something unfair, unnatural. But if you have been fighting private battles all along, you expect hardship. You have made peace with its inevitability. This removes the shock that paralyzes so many when the public test arrives. You can move quickly to action because you do not waste time asking why the storm came. You knew it would eventually. And perhaps most importantly, private victories give you integrity in public moments. When you act under pressure, your choices are guided not by the desire to appear virtuous, but by the same principles you have been living by in obscurity. This consistency is rare, and it is what makes people trust you, not because you performed well once, but because they sense you would have acted the same way even if no one had been watching. So when the world finally sees you tested, they may think the strength they see was forged in that moment. Let them think it, if they must. You know the truth. The storm was only the unveiling. The real work was done in the invisible hours, in the quiet fights, in the private decisions that shaped the person you already were before the first wave ever hit. Now, some exciting news. Our channel now offers a members club. By joining it, you'll unlock exclusive benefits, deeper content dives, and personal insights. Join us on this journey and let's build a meaningful life together. And I also humbly ask you to leave a comment, as it helps my channel immensely. If you do not know what to comment, just write "better every day" so I know you reached this far. And don't forget to subscribe for more content like this. Also, I've linked some books on Stoicism that helped me become the man I am today and will also help you achieve a Stoic mindset. One of the quietest but most profound effects of winning your invisible battles is how it changes the way you show up in relationships. Not just romantic or family relationships, but friendships, professional partnerships, and every bond where trust is the currency. People may not see the training ground where you built your resilience, discipline, and self-mastery, but they feel its effects every time they interact with you. When you have faced yourself in silence, you stop bringing certain storms into the lives of others. You're less reactive, less easily pulled into petty dramas, less likely to let your worst impulses spill out in a moment of frustration. This doesn't mean you become emotionless or detached. It means you have fought and won enough inner battles to prevent your ungoverned emotions from becoming someone else's problem. The Stoics understood that the greatest service you can offer others is mastery over yourself. Marcus Aurelius wrote that we should be tolerant with others and strict with ourselves. This is not about being harsh or self-punishing. It's about holding yourself to a higher standard so that you can be a steady, trustworthy presence for the people around you. If you fought the fight to control your own temper, you don't add chaos to already tense situations. If you've battled your own vanity, you don't need to compete for attention in every conversation. If you've confronted your own fears, you can stand steady when others falter. There is also a deeper kind of reliability that emerges from these unseen struggles. When you've made and kept private commitments to yourself, waking up at a certain time, following through on tasks, living by principles even when no one is watching, you become someone whose word carries weight. People might not know exactly why they trust you, but they sense it. Integrity has a texture you can't fake. It is felt in the way you keep small promises as seriously as large ones, in the way you follow through without the need for reminders or pressure. Another change is empathy. People who have fought and endured invisible battles tend to develop a sharper awareness of what others might be carrying in silence. You know what it's like to walk through the day with a storm raging inside, to look composed while fighting something no one else can see. This makes you slower to judge and quicker to extend grace. You stop assuming that visible ease means a life without struggle. You understand that someone else's quiet might be strength or it might be exhaustion, and either way you meet it with respect. But perhaps the most powerful effect of winning these inner wars is that you become a source of stability. In a world where many people are driven by impulse, mood, and outside validation, steadiness is rare and deeply attractive. It doesn't mean you never waver or feel fear. It means you don't abandon your principles when emotions run high. It means people can depend on you to act with consistency even when circumstances are unpredictable. This stability is not built in public view. It comes from the mornings you got up to face the day when it would have been easier to hide. It comes from the nights you chose reflection over distraction. It comes from the repeated act of meeting yourself honestly and refusing to compromise the person you are trying to become. Others may never know these moments happened, but they benefit from their results every time they lean on you. There's also a protective quality to this kind of inner strength. When you fought your own invisible battles, you are harder to manipulate. You don't need constant approval, so flattery has less sway over you. You don't avoid discomfort at all costs, so threats lose some of their power. You don't crave control over others, so you can lead without dominating. All of this makes you a safer person to be around, not because you are harmless, but because you have chosen to direct your strength with discipline. Over time, this makes you into the kind of person people remember in a crisis, the one who stays calm, who speaks clearly, who takes action without panic. They may call it confidence, but you know it's something quieter and deeper. It's the accumulation of all the invisible victories that taught you not to be ruled by fear, pride, or impulse. In the end, the trust others place in you is not built on your words alone. It's built on the character you forged when no one was looking. And while they may never know the details of those unseen battles, they will feel their results every time they turn to you and find that you are steady, present and true to your word. One of the quiet revolutions that comes from fighting and winning your invisible battles is the gradual release of your dependence on public approval. In the beginning, most people are driven, consciously or not, by the desire to be seen as capable, admirable, or worthy. It's human. We're social creatures, and the recognition of others has always been a form of currency. But when you live for it, it becomes a leash. Invisible battles cut that leash because they force you to operate in conditions where there is no applause. You keep your commitments when no one else will ever know. You resist temptations without telling the story later to prove your virtue. You swallow words that would wound, not because you want to be seen as gracious, but because you want to be gracious. When the habit of acting without witnesses becomes second nature, the audience, whether it cheers or boos, loses its power to dictate your choices. This is moral independence, the ability to do the right thing without needing permission, encouragement, or validation. It is what the Stoics called living in accordance with virtue, where the guiding force of your life is not how others perceive you, but the compass of your own reasoned principles. Marcus Aurelius warned himself not to be whirled about by every breeze, meaning not to let public opinion pull you in one direction one day and another the next. Without moral independence, you will always be vulnerable to this wind. One person's praise will inflate you, another's criticism will deflate you. You'll spend your life adjusting your sails for approval rather than steering toward your true course. Invisible battles are the antidote because they break the habit of external reinforcement. You learn to act in line with your values even when there's no one to notice, no reward to gain, and no social cost to avoiding the effort. You see, day after day, that the satisfaction of holding to your principles is stronger and more durable than the fleeting pleasure of being seen doing so. This is also why invisible battles make you harder to manipulate. When someone knows you need their praise, they can withhold it to control you. When they know you dread their disapproval, they can use it as a weapon. But if you've trained yourself to act without seeking either, their leverage disappears. You are no longer bargaining for affection, admiration, or acceptance. You are already whole without them. There is a deeper liberation here as well, the freedom to be misunderstood. Many people contort themselves to avoid being judged unfairly, exhausting themselves to explain every decision and correct every false impression. But when your integrity is rooted in the battles you fought alone, you no longer feel the need to defend it constantly. You understand that perception is not reality, and that your reality does not require unanimous consent. This doesn't make you arrogant or dismissive of others' views. On the contrary, it allows you to listen more openly because you are not listening with the desperate hope of winning approval. You can weigh feedback without being enslaved by it. You can consider disagreement without feeling that it threatens your identity. This steadiness is impossible if your sense of worth depends on the shifting tides of public opinion. The moral independence shaped in invisible battles also gives you the courage to stand apart when necessary. Many people know what is right, but lack the resolve to do it alone. The moment they see the crowd moving in another direction, they fall in line. But if you have been training in private to resist your own impulses, you are better equipped to resist collective ones. You can walk away from a corrupt opportunity, decline an unethical advantage, or oppose a popular but destructive trend, not because it is easy, but because you've already learned that the hardest victories are often the ones no one sees. In time, this independence changes your very posture in life. You stop walking into rooms wondering how to impress people and start walking in wondering how to remain true to yourself. You measure success not by applause, but by alignment, by whether your actions today matched your principles yesterday. And when you go to bed at night, the voice that matters most is not the world's, but your own. The Stoics knew this freedom was the only true kind. You cannot control the opinions of others, and you cannot ensure the applause will last. But you can control your willingness to act without them. And once you have that, you are no longer a captive of the crowd. You are your own master, guided not by noise, but by the quiet certainty that you have fought your battles honestly, whether anyone noticed or not. Some battles are won quickly, a decision made, a temptation resisted, a moment of restraint held. But the invisible battles that shape you most are often the ones that don't end in minutes or hours. They stretch over weeks, months, even years, requiring you to keep showing up long after the novelty has worn off and the initial burst of motivation has faded. These are the slow wars, maintaining discipline in your craft without external deadlines, staying committed to personal change when no one is tracking your progress, holding to your principles in an environment where compromise would be easier every single day. And because they take place out of sight, they often feel thankless. There is no cheering section, no scoreboard, no applause when you hit another quiet milestone. The only voice acknowledging your progress is your own, and sometimes even that voice grows tired. The Stoics saw endurance not as a grim act of stubbornness, but as a kind of wisdom. Marcus Aurelius wrote that we should hold ourselves erect in the face of hardship, not because the hardship will end quickly, but because it may not end soon at all. Endurance, in the Stoic sense, is the art of keeping your principles intact while carrying a burden you cannot immediately set down. Seneca compared it to long-distance travel. The road is not always pleasant and there are stretches that seem endless, but the traveler keeps moving because they know the direction is right. For the Stoic, the same is true in unseen struggles. You don't endure because it's comfortable. You endure because you have chosen a destination worth reaching, and quitting would make the journey meaningless. Invisible battles test endurance more severely than public ones because there is no external recognition to reinforce you. A soldier in a war zone may have comrades and commanders urging them on. An athlete has coaches, teammates, and spectators to hold them accountable. You must become your own encourager, your own witness, your own reminder of why this matters. And there will be days when that's hard. Days when you feel your effort is invisible even to yourself, when you start to wonder if the work is worth it. Here, the Stoic practice of returning to first principles becomes critical. You remind yourself why you began this battle in the first place. You trace the line from where you were to where you are now, noting the subtle shifts in your character, the temptations that are weaker now, the patience that lasts longer, the anger that fades faster. You see that progress in these wars is measured not in grand leaps, but in quiet shortening of your worst impulses and the strengthening of your best. Endurance in invisible battles also requires a shift in how you define success. If you see victory only as the day the battle is over, you may live in constant frustration. The Stoic reframes it. Success is in the act of continuing. The willingness to keep fighting is itself a kind of triumph. Every day you don't give in is a day you've proven that the challenge has not broken you. In this way, you can win even while the war is still going on. This mindset changes the texture of endurance. It's no longer about gritting your teeth until the end. It's about integrating the struggle into your life without letting it consume you. You can work, love, create, and grow while carrying it. You learn to rest without quitting, to adjust your pace without abandoning the road entirely. This flexibility keeps your endurance sustainable. It becomes a rhythm rather than an unbroken strain. And here's the quiet reward. Endurance forged in unseen struggles doesn't vanish when the battle ends. It becomes part of your permanent strength. The patience you learned while resisting an old habit will serve you when building a new skill. The focus you honed while navigating a long season of difficulty will serve you in leadership, in relationships, in moments where persistence is the deciding factor. Others may never know the battles that built this resilience. They will only see the result, someone who doesn't crumble when the road stretches on longer than expected, someone who can keep moving with steadiness even when the destination is far from sight. They may think it's simply natural toughness, but you will know it was earned, one invisible mile at a time. Do you want me to proceed? When you fought enough invisible battles, something begins to change in the way you see the world. The clutter starts to fall away. The noise of trends, comparisons, and superficial ambitions grows quieter. You begin to see, with increasing sharpness, what is essential and what is not. This clarity doesn't arrive in a single epiphany. It builds slowly, shaped by every private decision you made to hold to your principles when compromise would have been easier. The Stoics valued this kind of clarity because it is hard-won. You don't gain it by reading about virtue or discussing philosophy over wine. You gain it by facing yourself in moments where no one else is watching, asking, does this action make me stronger or weaker? Does it honor who I want to be or pull me further away? Over time, those questions stop being part of a conscious checklist. They become a reflex. Invisible battles force you to simplify your motives. In public struggles, there's often a mix of reasons, some noble, some not. You might fight partly because it's right, partly because it's expected, partly because you want to be seen as brave. In private struggles, the audience is gone. The only question left is whether the fight is worth it for its own sake. That is a clarifying fire. It burns away ego and leaves only conviction. This process also reshapes your relationship with achievement. Before, you may have pursued goals because they were impressive to others, titles, possessions, visible markers of success. After enough unseen struggles, you start to measure achievement differently. A victory in public might feel good for a moment, but it's fleeting. The real measure becomes, will this matter if no one knows I did it? If the answer is yes, it passes the test of being worth your life's time. Clarity also comes in your relationships. Fighting your own private battles gives you a deep sense of how precious and limited energy is. You stop giving it away to people who constantly drain it without adding anything in return. You stop trying to maintain connections based purely on history, obligation, or appearances. The circle may get smaller, but it becomes richer, filled with people whose presence strengthens rather than diminishes you. And perhaps the most surprising form of clarity is how it changes your pace. When you are driven by appearances, you move frantically, always trying to prove yourself, always filling the calendar, always chasing the next visible win. But when you've endured long seasons of silent struggle, you learn that the quality of a step matters more than its speed. You become willing to slow down if it means moving in the right direction. The Stoics warned against being busy with nothing. It's possible to be in constant motion without actually advancing toward anything meaningful. Invisible battles cure you of this. They make you aware of how much energy you've wasted in the past on what didn't matter. And once you've learned to guard your energy in private, you begin guarding it in public as well. Clarity also means you stop needing to win every fight. You start to see which battles are worth your effort and which are distractions designed to pull you off course. The Stoics would call this selective engagement, choosing where to spend your strength so that when a real test comes, you have the reserves to meet it. The ego often wants to prove itself in every arena. The disciplined mind chooses only the arenas that matter. By the time this clarity settles into you, life feels lighter, not because the weight of responsibilities has disappeared, but because you're no longer carrying the unnecessary ones. You're no longer fighting to defend an image or keep up with others' expectations. You're no longer spending your days chasing rewards you don't truly value. And the space that's left, freed from all that clutter, becomes the place where your best work, your most meaningful relationships, and your truest self can grow. This is the hidden reward of invisible battles, the sharpened vision that comes from standing alone in the dark with only your values to guide you. Once you've learned to navigate by that light, the distractions of the world lose much of their pull. You don't need everyone to understand your choices. You just need to know that those choices are taking you where you've decided you want to go. By the time you've fought enough invisible battles, you begin to understand something the Stoics knew well. The strongest parts of a person's character are often built in places no one will ever see. Public achievements may be the visible structure, the ornate facade, the polished entryway, but the foundation that holds it all up is hidden beneath the surface. Those quiet victories over your impulses, those private moments when you kept your word to yourself, those times you chose restraint over retaliation. They are the unseen architecture of your life. They don't appear in photos, they won't be written in your biography, but they are the reason the visible parts of your life stand at all. Without them, the facade cracks the moment the wind rises. The Stoics understood that the measure of a person is not how they perform when the world is watching, but how they act when there is no reward, no recognition, no one to witness their effort. That is the truest test of integrity, doing what is right when only you will ever know you did it. And when you live by that test, your life gains a kind of stability that cannot be shaken by fortune or circumstance. Over the course of these battles, something else happens. You stop chasing the illusion that life is about collecting visible wins. You start to see that the most important victories are not the ones that change your resume, but the ones that change you. Every time you choose discipline over indulgence, patience over irritation, honesty over convenience, you are reshaping yourself in ways that no loss can undo. And here is the paradox. Though no one sees these battles as you fight them, they will feel the results. People will notice your steadiness in crisis, your refusal to be pulled into pettiness, your ability to make decisions without the constant need for approval. They may not know where it comes from, but you will. You know it was earned in 1,000 moments where you could have taken the easier path and didn't. This is why the Stoic does not wait for the big stage to practice virtue. They understand that by the time the spotlight turns toward you, it's too late to build the strength you need. That work is done in obscurity, brick by brick, choice by choice, until the architecture is so solid that no storm can bring it down. And the beauty of this approach is that it frees you from the tyranny of outcome. You may win or lose in the public eye, but either way, you remain unshaken, because your worth was never dependent on that outcome in the first place. You know the real victories were won before the first public challenge began. So you keep fighting your invisible battles, not for applause, not for recognition, but for the person they are shaping you to be. You carry that work with you into every room, every decision, every relationship. It becomes the quiet strength that allows you to stand firm in a world that is always shifting, a world that often rewards the loud over the steady, the visible over the real. In the end, the Stoic's life is not defined by the number of public wins, but by the depth of the invisible architecture holding it all together. And when your last day comes, when there are no more battles to fight, you will not need the world to testify to your strength. You will know in the deepest part of yourself that you built something solid, something true, something no one could see but you, and that it was enough. Now, if any part of this message has been helpful to you, leave us your like and comment, helping the algorithm recommend it to someone who needs it at this time. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss new videos. And if you look through the videos we've already uploaded, you're sure to find something to take with you. Have a good day.